Let's start off with what happened this year. Now, you're writing at the moment that we were at the precipice. We were facing Armageddon, but we took a step back.
Yeah, it was an amazing start to the year, and I'll talk a bit later maybe about the volatility aspects were a bit different, but let's go back to mid of February when it seemed the central banks were just tapped out of everything they could be doing. Deutsche Bank was seen to be on the verge of breaching a coupon payment, and everything looked dire. And fast forward a couple of weeks, and here we are 10% higher.
Yeah, a month later. It's quite something. So what changed?
And that's actually the interesting question. Was it maybe a sentiment thing? Did people overreact to begin with? Because nobody can really find a clear catalyst, except for the fact that everything seemed to be turning out all right.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't when people actually took a step back and went, hang on a second, we're not going to hell in a handbasket. That's correct, is it not to say?
Yeah, it could be, and that's where the volatility aspect is interesting. If you look at August, which also was quite a significant rip down, if you looked at volatility indicators, a very cliche, but still telling one is the VIX, that one popped all the way up. Coming around last January, February, far, far less of an effect. And the reason behind it, and people did a study into that, is that the overall positioning of investors, hedge funds, retail, everybody, in volatility-related products was somewhat negative in August, so people had to buy back and panic, and actually a net small positive in January. So maybe people were sort of expecting it. And if you don't see a big ratcheting up in volatility, there's not the level of inherent panic that you would have seen in August. So maybe it's also that led to people realize...
But is there an inherent distrust by some Western investors now?
I think if you look at the rhetoric, everybody is very negative. And if you, for example, if you go to the US, you see people very negative about the prospects of China, about the trust in the Chinese market. That's one of the reasons that, for example, Hong Kong markets are looking, from that perspective, cheap maybe.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look at them. I mean, they're just shy of 10 multiple, 10 times earnings. I think 9.8 or something like that, which is historically dirt cheap. Now, the thing is, why do we still have this huge divergence and this premium of A shares over H shares here in Hong Kong?
That's an interesting one that people would have expected in the Hong Kong Shanghai Stock Connect. That's a thing of the past. Well, it actually just got started. And could be on one side, say the western part of the border, a general lack of trust, but also some difficulties in the market on the Chinese side of the border. Like selling short is difficult, selling futures somewhat frowned upon, to say it politely. So maybe there's just a lack of people selling on the Chinese side. And what I always surprised at, but that maybe is a level of sophistication, if you're a big Chinese asset manager, you own a huge amount of A shares in companies like your PetroChinas of the world. Why don't you flip to H shares? You got the cash, you can convert, and you have the access to the southern market.
Well, let's just move to another market in this part of the world. Look at Japan. And what are you making of A, Abenomics, B, what is priced into the topics right now, for instance?
Japan is, from that perspective, interesting. There was an article on Zero Hedge, which likened it to the Mississippi bubble, which in a way was also a relatively fueled by monetary expansion rally. The thing with Japan, and again, I don't take a directional bet on the market itself, but we do have analysis and positions in volatility. What you see in Japan is that Kuroda does all the heavy lifting, makes...
That's what we call Kurodanomics, I suppose.
Yeah, because Abe actually just... If there was some kind of an agreement, he just breaks it. I just saw this morning that, no, we're going to delay the sales tax again. Yeah, at one point, what's the difference between Japan and Greece? They both don't use Western letters. They're both, well, at least Greece has a lot of islands, Japan too. At one point, your metrics start to become a bit ugly.